At my 65th birthday party, my husband publicly confessed his 30-year secret, a mistress and their grown twins. He thought he was shocking me into submission, but I had a USB drive and divorce papers under my chair, ready to claim every asset and dollar he had stolen. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The air in my living room was thick and sweet, heavy with the scent of vanilla buttercream and 65 burning candles. I stood there, bathed in the soft glow, surrounded by 50 of my closest family and friends. My daughters, Simone and Chloe, had outdone themselves, gold and white balloons, Motown playing softly, the whole scene a perfect, elegant lie. Everyone was singing, reaching the last chorus of Happy Birthday when my husband, Bernard, stood up. He raised a hand for silence, and the room went still, 50 voices freezing mid-note. That's when the heat hit me, a sharp jolt in my chest. I knew that look on his face. Before Eleanor blows out the candles, he announced, I have a special announcement to make. His voice was like a whip, confident, commanding, and just slightly cruel. It was the tone I'd lived under for 37 years. He walked to the front door, opened it, and the music died in my ears. A woman walked in, younger than me, maybe 52. Her dress was too tight, her makeup too heavy. Behind her came two young people, a man and a woman in their 30s, beautiful kids who were clearly twins. The family resemblance hit me like a physical blow. Bernard's eyes, his nose, his smile, all perfectly reproduced. I felt my pulse spike, but my face remained a smooth, cool mask. Everyone, Bernard declared, his arms sweeping out like a ringmaster at a circus. I need to introduce you to my second family. This is Celeste, and these are my children, Marcus and Maya. I watched my life explode in a cloud of gold confetti. My daughter Simone's mouth fell open, a silent scream. Chloe's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the silence like a gunshot. Celeste stood there looking smug, like she just won a medal. The twins shifted, clearly uncomfortable. And Bernard, my husband of 37 years, puffed out his chest, waiting for applause. I've hidden them for 30 years, he finished, the ultimate self-serving confession. But I can't do it anymore. They deserve to be acknowledged. My knees went weak. That familiar fear of losing everything. But I forced the tremor into my hands. I reached under the chair where I had placed a wrapped box hours earlier. This was it. The moment I had been planning since I was a young woman of 35. I stood up slowly, calmly, and walked right over to my husband. I know, Bernard, I said, my voice clear, loud enough for all 50 people to hear. I smiled. It wasn't a loving smile, but the hard, polished smile you give a competitor right before the checkmate. Happy anniversary. This is for you. I handed him the wrapped box. His confident smile faltered just slightly. What is this? He asked, suddenly uncertain. The uncertainty was the victory. Open it, I instructed. I think everyone here will want to see what's inside. He tore the paper, ripped the box open. Inside he saw the small USB drive and a thick manila envelope. He pulled out a folded note and read it aloud, his voice shaking. Play the USB on the TV. Happy 30th anniversary of your other family. His face went white, ash gray. Eleanor, what is this? He whispered. What you wanted, Bernard, I said, taking the USB from his suddenly trembling hand. Truth. Let's show everyone the truth. I walked to the entertainment center, my hips straight, my head high. I plugged the drive into the massive screen. The first image flashed up. Bernard holding newborn twins in 1995. A dollar amount was overlaid on the photo in sharp red numbers. The room erupted. Whispers, gasps, and the furious sound of my own daughters. I was ready to watch the long game begin. I knew this was going to happen, and I had been preparing for it. That level of calm is not a gift. It is a shield forged over 30 years of betrayal. To understand how I got here, how I managed to keep that smile on my face, you have to go back to the beginning of the lie, back to when I was a young woman of 35, and I found the first crack in the foundation of my life. I was Eleanor Carter, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I met Bernard when I was 26. He was 28, ambitious, charming, and starting his own construction company. We married 2 years later in 1988. It was a small, hopeful wedding. We had Simone in 1983 and Chloe in 1986. I was an elementary school teacher, grading papers at night while nursing babies, working for what was, at the time, barely $30,000 a year. Bernard was building his company, coming home covered in concrete dust, exhausted, but driven. Then around 1989, Bernard landed a big contract renovating buildings in Gary, Indiana, only about 45 minutes southeast of Chicago. Suddenly, he was gone all the time. "Baby, I have to be on site," he'd say. "These crews need supervision. I'll be back Wednesday or Thursday or Friday." I was essentially a single mother, managing everything alone. But I told myself this was temporary, a sacrifice for our future. The lie was that his absence was a sacrifice we both had to make. Then the artifacts started appearing. A smudge of lipstick on his collar that wasn't my color. Receipts from Gary restaurants I had never stepped foot in. Strange charges on our credit card. A woman's clothing from a store I'd never shopped at. And then the one that twisted the knife. A Valentine's Day charge for roses that I never received. My stomach dropped. I knew. I risked the truth by confronting him in 1990. "That's not my lipstick, Bernard. And who got the roses?" I asked, holding the crumpled receipt in my shaking hand. He looked me dead in the eye and flipped the script. The denial was immediate and harsh. "Eleanor, you're being insecure. That's not attractive," he hissed. "I'm working my ass off for this family, and you're accusing me of what? Cheating?" He made me feel crazy. He made me apologize for suspecting him. He made me feel guilty for not trusting him. He won that round. I dropped my eyes, a single tear tracing a path on my cheek. I paid the micro cost of my own dignity. I stopped asking questions, but I did not stop watching. That night, I slept facing away from him. The distance between us felt wider than the entire state of Indiana. The next step was to find concrete evidence. I went to the file cabinet. In 1991, before cell phones, long-distance calls were itemized on your home bill. My finger traced the lines. Dozens of calls to the same number in Gary. Late-night calls, early morning calls, conversations that lasted for hours while I was either at work or sleeping. One afternoon, I used a payphone outside the grocery store. I felt the grimy plastic against my ear as I dialed the number. A woman answered. "Hello," she said. Her voice was soft, young. My hand slipped on the receiver. My heart pounded against my ribs. I hung up without a word. I had my answer. The truth was a soft voice that broke on impact. I stood there, breathing in the smell of stale coffee and exhaust. My mind was screaming, "Confront him. Leave." But a quiet voice answered, "He'll lie. He'll gaslight you. He'll make you crazy again." My anger, that raw, blinding rage, was a luxury I couldn't afford. I had 2 little girls, and my entire financial world was locked up in his name. I had to be smart. I bought a cheap notebook and a pen. I opened the yellow pages and looked up one thing: private investigators. My new reality clicked into place. This wasn't about yelling anymore. This was a chess game. The truth was no longer enough. I needed leverage. I found a private investigator named James Mitchell, an older black man who ran a small business out of an office in Bronzeville. He was a retired cop. I paid him with money from my teaching salary, money Bernard never tracked, because to him it was just my little job. The choice was a terrifying gamble. If Bernard found out, I'd lose the PI, and he'd destroy my career. But the micro cost of paying James was the first time I felt control in months. "I need you to follow my husband," I told him, looking him straight in the eye. "Every move, every hour he spends in Gary, everything." I felt a cold sweat prickle my neck. This was a vulnerability ping. I was risking all my dignity on a retired stranger. James came back 2 weeks later with a manila folder that shattered my world. "Her name is Celeste Washington, 23 years old," James said gently, sliding the first page across his desk. "Single mother of twins, Marcus and Maya Carter, born April 1995. Robert, Bernard is listed as the father on both birth certificates." The names and the date hit me hard. 1995. Simone was 12, Chloe was 9. He had a whole other family the same age as my youngest. The report stated they lived in a modest house in Gary that Bernard had purchased under an LLC. James laid out the photos. Bernard pushing a double stroller. Bernard at a playground with the babies. Bernard sitting at a kitchen table that wasn't ours. Feeding twins in high chairs. An entire life, 45 minutes away. I stared at the images until my eyes burned. I didn't cry. I felt something crack inside me, not break. Crack like ice on a frozen lake. My jaw locked. "Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry," James said, his voice low. "Do you want me to continue surveillance?" I looked up at him. My mind was suddenly tactical. "Yes," I said, firm. "I want quarterly reports every 3 months. Photos, activities, expenses, everything. Can you do that?" He nodded slowly. "I can. But Mrs. Carter, why? If you know he's cheating, why not just leave?" I thought about my daughters, 7 and 9. I thought about my salary, barely $30,000 a year. I thought about Bernard's growing company, all the assets in his name. I had to secure their future. "Because," I answered, "I need to be smart about this. I need to prepare." My fear of poverty became the fuel for my resolve. This was the first major choice, a volitional verb. I chose to sign the contract with James, paying the cost of $300 every 90 days to buy myself time. For the next 30 years, like clockwork, James delivered a report. I watched my husband's second family grow up through photographs. Marcus's first day of school, Maya's dance recital, both kids' graduations, middle school, high school, college. Bernard was there for all of it. The reports detailed his pattern, Monday through Wednesday in Gary with Celeste and the twins, Thursday through Sunday in Chicago with me and our girls. He told Celeste he lived in Gary but worked in Chicago. He told me he lived in Chicago but worked in Gary. Meticulous lies, maintained for decades. But here is what Bernard didn't know. His carefully maintained deception was now my primary source of leverage. I sat alone in my home office, the scent of fresh photo paper thick in the air, staring at a receipt from the PI report. It showed the purchase price of Celeste's house in Gary, $145,000 in 1994. That money, drawn from the business, was theft. I needed to cut off the source. In 1992, I planted the first seed. "Honey," I said to Bernard one evening, watching him read the newspaper. I was reading about tax benefits for small businesses. I kept my voice light, casual, almost dull. "If the house and the company are in my name, we can pay less in taxes," I explained. "It's a strategy wealthy people use." He barely looked up. He was already thinking about his other life, distracted by the twin demands on his time. "Whatever you think is best, baby," he mumbled. "You're smarter about that stuff than me." I signed the deed. The house went into my name only. Within 2 months, I became the sole legal owner of Carter Construction Company. The cars, the investment accounts, everything. Bernard thought it was about taxes. It was about control. My hand stopped shaking for the first time in years. I locked down the world he stood on. My defense system was a three-part machine. 1. The career ladder. I went back to school, got my master's in education administration in 1995, and my doctorate in 2000. My salary climbed from $30,000 to $60,000, then to $85,000, and eventually over $120,000 a year. I wasn't just a teacher anymore. I was a principal, a woman of consequence. 2. The secret account. Every single year, I funneled money into a secret bank account. Small, consistent amounts, nothing that would trigger attention. I moved funds from the business accounts, my business, legally, into my own separate nest egg. Over 30 years, that account grew to $890,000. It was my insurance policy, my escape fund, my ammunition. 3. The ledger. James helped me track everything Bernard spent on Celeste and the twins. Monthly support to Celeste, $3,000 or sometimes $5,000. Private school tuition, cars at 16, college at Indiana University. Photos showed him taking them to Disney World, the Bahamas, New York. I calculated the total. Over 30 years, Bernard had spent $2,341,000 on his second family. That money, legally mine, funded his lies. My daughters never suspected. Simone went to Northwestern, became a lawyer. Chloe went to Spelman, became a doctor. They saw their father as funny, as someone who worked so hard for us. I smiled and nodded and kept my secrets. People ask why I stayed. I tell them I wasn't staying because I was weak. I was staying because I was strategic. Every year I stayed, I got stronger. While Bernard thought I was the oblivious housewife, I was preparing. I was building an empire from the inside out. I was not waiting for forgiveness. I was waiting for the moment of total leverage. The lie had become a life. I had watched Marcus and Maya grow up through a stack of photos as thick as a phone book. I knew Maya was a dancer. I knew Marcus played soccer. I knew more about their lives than they realized. It was survival, not stalking. The final report arrived in my secure mailbox on a rainy Tuesday in October. It contained the receipts for the twins' final college tuition payments from Indiana University, stamped and dated. This was the final piece. Bernard had paid for everything he thought he had to. That same afternoon, I was at the bank, reviewing Simone's tuition statement, a much larger sum, and the contrast was jarring. I felt a surge of cold fury. He was stealing from me to fund their lives. I went to my home safe and opened the binder containing the legal deed. I ran my finger over the signature. His name was there, but it was clear beneath mine. The single name that mattered was mine. Everything was locked down. The decision was no longer about money. It was about the cost of freedom. I realized Bernard was getting older. Maybe he was tired of living double lives. Maybe Celeste was pressuring him. I knew, deep down, he would eventually try to come clean so he could ease his own guilt. And when he did, I needed to be ready for the final action. I had planned for every possible legal maneuver. The problem wasn't a shortage of evidence. It was the sheer weight of it. "James," I said to the PI during a brief, hushed call, "I need one final product, a video slideshow. 30 years of surveillance." I told him I wanted the photos of Bernard with Celeste and the twins set to music, but with a special edition, dollar amounts overlaid on the photos, showing exactly what he'd spent. The final slide, I instructed, had to read, "Bernard Carter maintained 2 families for 30 years. Cost to second family $2,341,000, all funded with money stolen from marital assets." James was silent for a moment. That's cinematic, Mrs. Carter. It's the truth, James, I replied, and the truth needs maximum impact. I put the USB drive into a plain white gift box, wrapped it in gold paper, and tucked it away. I was not planning revenge. I was preparing for reality. I had built an airtight case. I had the verdict. I just needed the courtroom. The day came 3 weeks before my 65th birthday. We were sitting in the living room. The afternoon light slanted across the hardwood floor. Bernard took my hands, looked me in the eyes with fake sincerity. Eleanor, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 30 years ago. I looked at him blankly, pretending innocence. What is it, honey? He drew a shaky breath. I have another family, a woman named Celeste, twin children, Marcus and Maya. They're 30 years old. I've been supporting them this whole time. He paused, watching my face, waiting for me to break. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I never meant to hurt you, but I can't keep lying anymore. They deserve to be acknowledged. I'm going to bring them to your birthday party. I need everyone to know the truth. My heart hammered against my ribs. He thought he was doing me a favor, giving me the truth. He wanted drama so he could play the strong, repentant man. I let the silence hang in the air. Then I said quietly, Okay, Bernard, if that's what you need to do. He looked shocked. That's it? You're not going to yell, cry, throw things? Bernard, I smiled, calm as a lake. We've been married 37 years. If this is your truth, then we'll deal with it. Bring them to the party. I got up and walked to the kitchen, pretending to prepare dinner. But the moment I was alone, I felt my hand slide across the counter for balance. I signed up for this moment, but the waiting was over. That night, I made the call to James Mitchell. James, it's time, I whispered into the phone. I need everything compiled. Every report, every photo, every receipt, organized by year, burned onto that USB drive, and I need divorce papers drawn up. You're sure, Mrs. Carter? I've been sure for 30 years. Let's finish this. I hired the best divorce attorney in Chicago, a sister from my sorority who specialized in high-asset divorces. When she saw the 30 years of documentation, her eyes got wider and wider. Eleanor, this is incredible. You've built an airtight case. He doesn't stand a chance. Good, I said, because I want everything. We filed the papers immediately, but my lawyer agreed to delay serving him. The timing was crucial. I want him served on my birthday morning, I instructed, right before the party. Maximum impact. The plan was perfect. He would think he had the leverage, thinking his confession was the inciting incident. But the papers would be filed, the evidence packaged, and the cameras rolling before he could even blow out the candles. I placed the USB drive in the wrapped gift box, along with a copy of the divorce papers, hid it under my chair at the party, and waited. The box sat beneath me, heavy with 30 years of leverage. The house was packed. The singing had just stopped. Bernard stood there, the box in his hands, his face gray. My heart was calm, finally. I had moved from the edge of fear to the center of strategy. He finished reading the note aloud. He looked from the USB in his hand to the television screen above the mantel. He was waiting for my breakdown. Instead, he got the truth in high definition. The title card appeared on the screen, centered above a photo of a young Bernard with a newborn twin in each arm. Time-stamped 1995. The cost of deception. I had already filed the papers. He had no idea I had signed them for him while he was sleeping. The slideshow had begun. Photo after photo of Bernard, Celeste, Marcus, and Maya filled the screen. The images were time-stamped, dated, and marked with locations. Bernard holding newborn twins in 1995. Bernard at their high school proms, Bernard at their college graduations. 30 years of a secret family life, displayed for everyone to see. The room erupted. The sound was deafening, a wave of noise and shock. My daughter Simone started screaming at her father. "You had other children?" she shrieked, tears of pure betrayal streaming down her face. "While we were growing up?" Chloe was crying, yelling, "How could you? How could you?" Guests gasped, whispering, some already getting up to leave, embarrassed to witness the destruction. Celeste was shouting, her face contorted in anger. "Bernard, you said you were going to leave her," she cried. "You promised me." Marcus and Maya looked utterly devastated. "Dad, you told us Mom Celeste was your only wife," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "You said our family was real." Bernard tried to speak, tried to regain control of his narrative. "I can explain. I love both families equally." "You don't get to love two families," Simone screamed. "You chose to lie to everyone." Chloe turned her fury on Celeste. "Did you know he was married?" Celeste got defensive, her smugness gone. "He said he was separated, that the divorce was coming any day. He's been saying that for 30 years, and you believed him for 30 years?" Chloe's voice was pure white-hot fury. Within 15 minutes, the house had cleared out. Just my two daughters, Bernard, Celeste, and the twins remained, sitting in the wreckage of a party. The cake still sat on the table, the candles extinguished, but the lie was still burning. I calmly turned off the slideshow, walked back to the box, and picked up the thick manila envelope. "Bernard, these are divorce papers, already filed with the court," I said, my voice steady. "You were served this morning at 6 a.m. I signed for you while you were sleeping." His jaw dropped. "What?" "I never got—" "The server came early." I cut him off. "I handled it. These are your copies." I handed him the envelope. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely open it. He pulled out the papers and started reading, his face cycling from white to gray to a sickening green. "Eleanor, this says you're keeping everything. The house, the company, all the assets." "That's correct, Bernard," I replied, "because legally, I own everything." I let the fact hang in the thick air. "Remember 30 years ago when you agreed to put everything in my name for tax purposes?" He stared at me, realization dawning, raw and ugly. You planned this." "I've known about Celeste and your children since 1990, Bernard. I've been documenting everything for 30 years. I motioned to the television. Every dollar you spent on them came from accounts that legally belonged to me. I stepped closer, applying the legal pressure. That's theft of marital assets, fraud, misappropriation of funds. My lawyer is filing a lawsuit against you for $2.3 million plus emotional distress damages." Celeste found her voice again, a frightened whisper. "He promised to marry me, to take care of my children." I turned to her, calm but firm. "He's already married to me for 37 years. Any promises he made you were lies, just like he lied to me. But my kids, your kids are 30 years old, Celeste. They're adults. They're Bernard's financial responsibility now, not mine. I'm done subsidizing his double life. I had secured the financial future. Now, I had to secure the property." Marcus stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter, we didn't know. He told us you didn't exist. We're so sorry." I looked at the twins, innocent victims of their father's arrogance. "I believe you," I said. "This isn't your fault. You didn't ask to be born into deception." Bernard tried one last time to pull me aside. "Eleanor, please. Can we talk about this alone?" "No, we're done talking. You'll hear from my lawyer," I said, finality ringing in my voice. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow. You can stay in a hotel or with Celeste." I don't care. But you're not sleeping under my roof tonight. This is my house too, he protested. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. My name only. You have no legal claim to it. Pack your things and go. He looked around desperately at his betrayed mistress, his devastated twins, and his own daughters, who wouldn't even meet his gaze. He had nothing. You're really going to do this? He asked me. After 37 years, you did this, Bernard. I corrected him. 30 years ago when you started a second family. I'm just finishing what you started. He left that night, packing 2 suitcases, and walked out the door. Celeste and the twins followed him. The house went quiet. Simone and Chloe stayed with me, sitting in the wreckage of the party. Mom, Simone said quietly, did you really know this whole time? I showed them the boxes of PI reports I'd kept in my home office. 30 years of quarterly surveillance laid bare. Photos of baby Marcus and Maya, their first day of school, their graduations. Chloe was crying. Why didn't you leave him, Mom? Why did you stay? Because you two were young. Because I needed to build my career. Because I needed to secure our financial future, I explained. Because I knew if I waited, if I prepared, I could make sure we'd be protected when this day came. You've been planning this for 30 years? Simone asked, incredulous. Not planning revenge, preparing for reality, I corrected. Every dollar he spent, I documented. Every lie he told, I recorded. I built a case so strong that no court in the country would side with him. I have almost $900,000 he knows nothing about. I have this house. I have the company. I have everything. My daughters looked at me like they were seeing me for the first time. Mom, you're kind of a genius, Chloe whispered. I'm a survivor, I corrected her. 2 days later, Celeste showed up at my door, crying and desperate. She stood on my porch, a shadow of the smug woman from the party. Please, Mrs. Carter, please don't take everything. My kids need their father. I need support. He promised you lies, I said firmly. He was never going to leave me. He was never going to marry you. He was using you, just like he was using me. What am I supposed to do? I've invested 30 years in this man. Get a job. Figure it out. Your kids are adults. You'll survive. Just like I did. She looked at me with hatred. You're cruel. You're vindictive. I'm protecting what's mine. But ask yourself, Celeste, who's crueler? Me for defending myself, or Bernard for lying to both of us for 30 years? She turned and left. I watched her walk away and felt nothing but cold, hard resolve. The twins, Marcus and Maya, came to see me the following week, alone. They sat nervously in my living room. Mrs. Carter, we wanted to apologize, Marcus started. For existing? I asked, startling him. No, for our father's lies, for the hurt he caused. That's not your fault. You were children. You didn't choose this, I told them. Maya spoke up, tears in her eyes. Did you hate us? Knowing we existed. I thought about that. At first, yes. I hated the idea of you. You represented everything wrong with my marriage. But then I saw pictures of you as babies, innocent, perfect, and I realized you were victims too. You watched us grow up? Maya asked, her voice small. Through photographs, yes. I know you played soccer, Marcus. I know you were a dancer, Maya. I know you both graduated from IU. I know more about your lives than you might realize. They looked disturbed by that. That's kind of creepy, Marcus admitted. It was survival, I corrected. Your father was stealing from me to fund your lives. I documented every penny. That's not creepy. That's smart. Before they left, I offered them something I'd been thinking about. I'm going to offer you both professional counseling to help you process all of this. I'll pay for it. Not because I owe you anything, but because you deserve help dealing with what your father did." They looked shocked. "Why would you do that for us?" Maya asked. "Because you're innocent, and because I believe in breaking cycles of pain. Your father hurt all of us. I won't perpetuate that hurt." The court date came 4 weeks later. Bernard hired an expensive lawyer, thinking he could fight the divorce and keep his assets. My lawyer presented 30 years of evidence. The judge, a black woman in her 60s, looked at Bernard with open disgust. "Mr. Carter, you maintained 2 families for 30 years using your wife's business funds." Bernard tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, I worked hard for that company. I built it from nothing." "But your wife owned it legally, is that correct?" the judge pressed. "Well, yes, but only for tax purposes." "Mr. Carter, purposes don't matter. Ownership does. You stole marital assets to fund an extramarital affair and a second family. That's theft. That's fraud. Mrs. Carter has documented 2.3 million stolen over 30 years. Do you dispute these numbers?" Bernard slumped in his chair. "No, Your Honor." "Then I'm ruling in Mrs. Carter's favor. She retains full ownership of the house, the business, all marital assets. You are ordered to repay $2.3 million plus interest." The judge delivered the final blow. "You have 90 days to begin payment, or we'll start liquidating your retirement accounts and pension." Bernard was broken. His lawyer told him he'd have to declare bankruptcy, liquidate his pension, his 401k, his life insurance policies. Everything would go to paying me back. 6 months later, I heard through Simone that Bernard was living with Celeste in her small house in Gary. Their relationship was falling apart. She resented him for lying to her for 30 years. Our daughters wouldn't speak to him. Bernard tried to reach out to me several times. Texts, calls. Finally, I agreed to meet him once. Only once? At a coffee shop in Hyde Park. Neutral territory. He looked terrible, aged 10 years and 6 months. Gray, tired, defeated. "Eleanor, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did it. I don't know what I was thinking." "You did it because you could, Bernard," I said simply. "Because you thought I'd never find out. Because you underestimated me." "I did love you. I still do," he claimed. I laughed, not cruelly, just sadly. "Bernard, you loved yourself. I was just convenient. A respectable wife to present to the world while you played house with your young mistress in Gary." "I lost everything," he said, actually crying now. "I lost my daughters. I lost my home. I lost my business. I lost you." "You never had me. Not really," I said. "You had a woman you lied to for 30 years who was smart enough to protect herself. That's what you lost. Can you ever forgive me?" "Maybe someday. For my own peace, not for yours. But forgive doesn't mean forget. And it doesn't mean we have a relationship. You and I are done, Bernard. This coffee is goodbye." I left him sitting there, walked to my car, and drove to my new condo. I'd sold the house with too many memories and bought a beautiful 2-bedroom overlooking Lake Michigan. I had started my new life. 1 year later, I am 66, thriving in ways I never imagined. I sold Carter Construction Company for $4.2 million. I took that money plus my savings and invested wisely. I am financially set for life. I took Simone and Chloe on trips to Italy, Ghana, and the Caribbean, making up for all the family vacations Bernard missed. They see me differently now, not just as mom, but as a strategist, a survivor. "Mom, you played the long game and won," Chloe told me recently. I started a foundation, the Eleanor Carter Foundation for Women's Financial Literacy. I teach women how to protect themselves financially, how to document everything, how to prepare for the possibility that the person you love might betray you. Preparation isn't pessimism, it's wisdom. As for Bernard, last I heard, he was working construction again, not as an owner, but as a laborer. He was living in a small apartment alone. I don't think about him at all. People ask if I regret staying for 30 years. I tell them, no, I didn't waste those years. I invested them in my education, in my career, in raising my daughters, in securing every single asset, in building an unbreakable case. Bernard thought bringing his second family to my birthday would break me. Instead, it gave me the perfect stage to show everyone that I'd been 10 steps ahead for 30 years. The fool wasn't me. It was him. He destroyed our marriage. But I built something stronger from its ruins. A woman who knows her worth, who protects her assets, and who documents everything. The best revenge is quiet preparation, strategic planning, patient execution. I let him think he was winning while I secured the actual victory. Chess, not checkers. I am Eleanor Carter. I am 66 years old, and I won. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.